In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, wherever you happen to be in the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. We've got a great guest on, Jason Figgis, this evening. And Jason is an IFTA nominated film and TV director and has had work featured and commissioned by major broadcasters that include Sky One, Sky Arts, and Discovery Channel. He's also had many films to his credit. He's got credits for 22 different films, including Hide and Seek, I can't talk, Grandsploitation, Torment, Gore Theatre, 12 Slaves of Christmas, Family. There's a whole stack of them. Christmas Carol and Once Upon a Time in Dublin. So he's very, very active film and TV wise, and he works on documentaries as well. So very, very warm welcome, Jason. How are you?
I'm very well, and how are you? And thank you very much for having me on your show, not having you on your show, as you're on it all the time.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very, very good. I'm very good. Thank you. You're also known for doing documentaries as well, aren't you?
I am. I actually started out, I was going to say I started out doing documentaries, but I started out doing animation. I actually worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then I worked for Spielberg on American Tail 2, Fievel Goes West. And it was only after that I got into doing live action and started off doing documentaries. So documentaries would really be my first love because when I work with actors, I try and get the most realistic performance from them. But I find if it's a real subject, you don't have to worry about that because they're just being themselves. So you don't have to worry about a performance. You just have allowed them be themselves as the subject matter.
Yeah, I can see that would really have its advantage, as well as some of the horror films that you've done. You're also very into the supernatural, aren't you?
Well, I am. I mean, I have been ever since I was a little boy. My father's always had a big interest in the paranormal, and he had a lot of books, famous publishers like Fontana and Pan Books. You, I'm sure, Leo, will remember them as well. You're of the same vintage as me.
Yes,
so you'll remember those books. But they were amazing publishers of usually short stories, compilations of the paranormal and horror. And so I used to sneak them off my father's shelf, and I would read them at night with my trusty screw torch with its very large batteries that would leak battery acid. And I would read away into the wee hours of the morning, and until my father pulled the cover back. And he used to always say in Irish, "Solas amach," which means lights out. So that was kind of the warning to turn off your lights and go to bed, because I'd wake up with circles around my eyes for school at 7:30 in the morning. Okay. So I did, from a very early age, huge interest in the paranormal.
Yeah, and we've got a common friend, haven't we, John West, who's also producing.
We do.
And John's wonderful. Yeah. John's a wonderful historian as well. We've had him on the show, and it's kind of a blending of minds, really, isn't it? Because you have that common interest, and John is certainly quite knowledgeable historically, and I'm sure you've got great knowledge yourself.
Well, the great thing about John is, and John and I have joined forces in a big way, I've been kind of looking for years to find a producer that I could really kind of sit down with and go, okay, let's plan this out, but let's plan it out from a point of view of both of us being really solidly interested in the subject matter. I've worked with the producers before where everything has gone fine, but I always felt there was a kind of a lack of connection. And so the pushing of the project was never on an equal measure. But I found with John West that if I say something to John, then suddenly he'll talk about it for 20 minutes and he'll expand on the subject. And I go, wow, this is a guy who not only has the same interests as me, but he's expanding on the subject that I thought I knew a lot about and adding so much more to it. So when he started doing that, when I met him first, and funnily, I've never physically met him. We've only spoken very regularly over the phone, and we've had a lot of discussions about projects that we have in the works. So I'm going to be meeting him this summer in London. I realized that I had found almost like, the brother that I didn't know I had, and he's a year younger than me. So I'm his big brother. And he likes to say in more ways than one because I'm a weightlifter as well. So he finds it very amusing. So we have all these interests in common that we're both able to expand on the different elements of the subject matter. And it makes for a never-ending conversation that never becomes boring, at least for us. Maybe people listening in, but not for us. We have a great time.
Yeah, I find John very interesting as well, and I've known him for some time. And I do understand what you're saying about both having the same interests and pushing, because I think if someone is lagging behind, it's just a lot more work to get the thing done, isn't it? You have to keep pushing, but when you're both into it, there's just a flow with it.
But it's not just sadly, I'm sure you'll know this yourself from various things you've been involved in. It's a lack of energy around a subject. I think if somebody's heart isn't fully in it, it's never going to reach its full potential. And I fully believe in synchronicity and serendipity, or whatever other words you want to put on that if you meet somebody and you really have that connection with them, then you know that the force that comes from the universe around that to propel it forward is pretty spectacular. I mean, even in the short time I've been working with John, he has massively pushed everything forward. And again, that's because we're both 100% behind what we want to achieve together, as opposed to, I'll help you out on this and maybe you help me out on that. We're literally centered on our focus in whatever project it is, in giving that everything to move it forward. And I think that kind of concentrated energy is a very powerful thing.
It is. It's like when a band really gels, doesn't it? There's just that energy that produces so much.
I agree.
That's fantastic. What's been your most favourite film? I suppose that's very hard to narrow down because some of them are in different genres as well. Which is the most that's given you most pleasure to make?
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because sometimes the project you have most fun making ends up not being your favorite project. Now, very close to, I mean, I had this amazing, when I did a film, The Twilight Hour, with Simon Marsden back in 2000, between 2001 and 2003, we worked on it over a couple of years because he was researching a book and it took a long time to visit all the locations. He'd be off in other countries, gathering material, and I'd be waiting to come back to Ireland so we could continue that leg of the journey. That was an amazing experience. But what that led on to was me being invited to direct a film about the King's Head Theatre in Islington in London. And that incredibly hot summer in 2004 with my fiancée, Bernadette, who's now my wife and mother of my beautiful little daughter, it became not only an incredibly hot summer where it never rained, there was never a cloud in the sky. In fact, I don't think I had a dry neck for the entire summer. I was soaking wet with sweat. Sure your viewers will love that, our listeners even. But I ended up meeting so many incredible people because a lot of the stars of British film and theatre had started off on the boards of the King's Head Theatre in London, which was a dinner theatre set up by the amazing guy that was Dan Crawford, who sadly passed away a year after we shot the documentary and it was fully completed. I had the great honor of speaking to him when he was in hospital, and he had just viewed the final cut, and he thanked me and said that he was absolutely thrilled with it, and he died shortly afterwards. In fact, I even said to him, I said, "How are you feeling, Dan?" And he said, "Well, under the circumstances, just wonderful." And of course, he was gravely ill at the time in hospital. But working with him was an incredible experience. I mean, one day we had Alan Rickman in, another day we had Joanna Lumley in. In fact, I had the great honor of walking the full length of Upper Street, but walking Joanna back to her car. And every single person on the road did a double take when they saw that I was walking with, practically the Queen of England, Joanna Lumley. And I'm sure if the Queen wanted somebody to play her in her life story, she'd say, "I want Joe Lumley." because she's the most regal woman outside the royal family. But one day, I have to tell you this. Now, I did warn you I'm a tangentializer, so I apologize if I start ranting. But one day, we had to go to 3 different houses. Now, a lot of your listeners may not know who Maureen Lickman is, but she's an amazing, actress from stage and screen. Been in a lot of films, but mainly theatre, and that'd be her major love. But one day we had to go to her house to interview her. Then we had to go over to Prunella Scales' house, who is another great dame of British theatre and film. And then from there to the amazing Oscar-nominated actress Susanna York. So I essentially went to Superman's mother's house at the end of the day, and that was one of those wonderful experiences. So, in a very long roundabout way, that is the best experience I've ever had making a film. Which I know you're going, my God, that was 14 years ago. Isn't it awful? You haven't had an experience as good since. I've had amazing experiences since, but there was so much happening with so many amazing people in a short period of time that has to be the best experience I've had so far. But the film I am most proud of is my latest film, which is, the life story of the photographer Simon Marsden. That's the one I feel is the slickest and most beautiful film. But that's the way it is with a filmmaker, because you're constantly learning how to make films. You never stop learning. So you're always hoping that your latest film will be the best one you've made. And that's the way it always should be. Always moving forward and never moving backwards.
Yeah, I think you need that target, don't you? It's it's a little bit like mediumship, and I've said many times, I learn something every day, and mostly what I learn is I don't know anything, because it's a little bit like being a kindergarten, and then you suddenly learn there are A levels and S levels, and it's like, oh my God, so far to go. But again, it's a real privilege. Real privilege to do that. So on some of the sets, there are rumours and myths going about that when you are on a horror set, that it kind of invokes an energy of itself and strange things happen. Has that happened to you, Jason?
Well, not really. I mean, it's funny. I was involved with a program called the Teen Feature Film Project, where I shot 2 feature films with teenagers. One of them was called Children of a Darker Dawn, and the other one was called The Ecstasy of Isabel Mann. The first one was a dystopian picture about the apocalypse, where all adults die in a mysterious virus and only children are left to roam the world, unguardianed by anybody except themselves. And then the second one was about a young girl either suffering from mental illness or she genuinely is a vampire. So it's never clearly put across. Both films were really gruesome. But what I found was that the younger the child, the more blood they wanted in the film, which was very funny. So instead of the atmosphere being gruesome and scary, it was actually incredibly funny because the kids reveled in the gore. They thought it was hilarious. So you constantly had a feeling of everything being all right, and the level of energy being at a fever pitch of excitement for the children. And I think that kept any kind of negativity at bay, and it made the filming of both of those films, which were actually 2011, the summer of, and 2012, the summer of, lovely warm summers, lovely locations with a lot of really excited kids who every time we shot those films, they always said, "We're not really making a movie, are we? We're not really making a movie." And I'm like, "What do you think we're doing?" You see the camera rolling and me going action and cut. And they go, "Yeah, but it's not really a movie, is it?" So that was very funny because it wasn't until the films were released, they were picked up by MVD Entertainment Group and released and available worldwide for people to buy on DVD and video on demand, that they kind of went, oh, we really made a movie. Oh my God, it's actually out there. So that was funny and very sweet. So the short answer to my very long answers that I give is that no, there was no negative energies.
I think that's wonderful as well, because I sometimes, I see children in horror films, and something like Sixth Sense, when he's very teary.
Yeah,
Obviously, he's a great actor, but it does make you
yeah.
wonder, like, does he go home at nights and have nightmares and things? So I think it's really gratifying to know that it's treated as fun by the children, but there's that good atmosphere there.
Yeah. I think as well that because children are much better at play acting, whereas adults have kind of lost that. When adults do a horror movie, I think they get more disturbed because they feel they have to go into all these sense memories and they have to look back into traumatic periods of their lives in order to pull out a great performance. But children see it as play acting, so they enjoy it. It's a game. Yeah, there's loads of blood being thrown around, but they're also looking at the adults chatting and the makeup artists working and laughing and talking to each other. So they're soaking up the atmosphere of the reality of the situation, which is that they're playing a game and making this film. I mean, I had seen there was a girl tied to a tree and she's being eaten by a vampire, and she started crying and sobbing. And I said, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? And she goes, no, I'm just getting in character. I'm just getting in character. And then she goes, there's not enough blood on me. Where's the blood? There's not enough blood. And I'm like, that is amazing. And afterwards, she was laughing and giggling and just having the time of her life. So, there was never any of that feeling of, are we doing something here that's going to disturb these children for the rest of their lives? They couldn't get enough of it. They absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine that now. It's nice that you mention that, coincidentals and that, because I don't believe there's coincidence at all. I think it's all pre-planned. Some of the reasoning behind it may be very, very deep, and hard to fathom. But I don't feel that anything happens by coincidence. And I think it's nice that you and John have got drawn together, and you and I have also got drawn together, because
absolutely.
As well as having several things in common, including John, of course, but experiences of an enjoyment of ghost books and that kind of theme. Had you ever, when you were young, begun to drift in or have psychic or mediumistic experiences?
I've had some very strong instances of that. Some of them, it's funny, I've always been very open to the natural world. My brother Peter and I, we love hiking and camping. Now, he's an extremist in that he lives in Washington, D.C., and he goes to Virginia a lot, and he'll go hiking and camping on his own. He did the Camino 2 or 3 times with his son. But I don't mean sections of the Camino. I mean doing the entire thing in one trip, walking 800 to 900 kilometers beyond what is it, Santiago de Compostela, and going out further out to the sea. That's, my brother is an extremist, and I can't do that. But we both, we put a tent out in our back garden when we were kids, and we lived in the back garden for 6 months. We put a little mattresses out there. Yeah, we loved it, absolutely loved it. So I've always kind of felt, we'd lie there on a clear night on the ground, and we would look up at the stars and imagine being sucked off the earth into the stars and just floating around. Whereas a lot of people might find that terrifying. We thought, what an exhilarating thrill ride that would be. So I've always felt very connected to the natural world. I'm much less connected to cities, which I find really disturbing. I'm very kind of empathic, I was told. So if I'm in a busy city and people are walking past me and it's home time or it's lunch hour, I get so many conflicting energies from people that I actually start staggering and sometimes have to sit down somewhere and try and recenter myself. Because I'm taking on the energy of so many different people who are walking past me in the street. And much to the annoyance of my wife, I'd have to say, that we're trying to go somewhere and I'm suddenly staggering around the place going, I can't do this. I've got to get off this street. I found that with my daughter now, who's only 15 months, that I push her in the pram, so I can hide behind the pram and I can mill my way through people and they jump out of the way. because I have a pram there, ahead of me, and people are very aware of children, so they tend to give you. It's almost like the Red Sea parting. You can see way up the road where they're all starting to walk around you. But so again, I'm getting, it's a very long-winded way of coming around to some of the experience that I've had, but I just want to kind of set a scene. So some of the early experience I've had where, and I'm sure you will know this one extremely well, where I would see somebody walking down the street and then suddenly they'd have no face, and then the face of somebody would appear on their face, and it would be somebody that I know. And I'd go, oh, there's John. And then they get to me and it's not John at all. But that day I will meet that person or they'll call me. And that has happened to me so many times. It's beyond the beyond of anyone calls, as you said, coincidence, which I don't believe in either. I had one particular occasion where I saw a body floating in the Liffey. And it was early in the morning and I saw a body floating down under the bridge, and I ran across the road to see it come out the other side. And when I got home, I said to my father, I saw a body floating in the Liffey. Somebody had drowned. And it wasn't until later that afternoon that it was reported on the news that 3 or 4 hours after I saw a body, a guy stood up on the bridge and jumped in and drowned himself.
Oh.
On that very same day, but 3 or 4 hours ahead. So I'm kind of getting a shiver down my spine now remembering it, because that was chilling to me. And it kind of worried me because, I've had a few very strong feelings like that kind of worry me. I go, oh God, why am I thinking of that? I'm sure there are people listening in who are rolling their eyes, and, there's going to be people listening who are just listening out of curiosity, and they're not necessarily a believer, or they want to believe. The night that Princess Diana died, which was August 31st, 1997, I was sleeping, and I dreamt that her partner, oh my God, what's his name? Dodi Al-Fayed.
Dodi, yep.
Dodi Al-Fayed. I dreamt that there was a headline and it said, Dodi Al-Fayed has left Princess Diana. And when I woke up, my mother said, Princess Diana is really badly injured and Dodi Al-Fayed has been killed, and my heart sank. And it wasn't until later we found out that Princess Diana also died. And I thought, well, why would I dream that? Why am I dreaming about the death of Dodi Al-Fayed? I mean, what has he got to do with me? I ended up sending a card to his father, Mohammed, and got a really nice card back saying, thank you so much for thinking of us at this time. And I sent one as well to Prince Harry and Harry, and what's his older brother's name?
I'm a
the
bit
future
lost
King of
myself.
England. The future King of England. And I also got a lovely card back from the palace, thanking me for, thinking of them. But I felt compelled to send them a card because I had dreamt something personal that had nothing to do with me. But I'd had this kind of presentiment in a dream. I had another one where I was walking.
Can I just interrupt you there? We're just going to go into a break, and we'll be straight back after this.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
One of the planet's most powerful antioxidant products is here for you to enjoy. Chaga mushroom tea. This tea has been used as a potent natural health solution for thousands of years. In fact, the Chinese call it king of the herbs. The health value alone is worth a look, as Chaga mushroom tea packs a punch with pure vitality and smooth energy. It's 100% wild crafted, safe, and effective. Get it now at arcticchaga.com. That's ARCTICCHAGA.com, or call 916-969-2678. That's 916-969-2678. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Order your supply today.
Dear John, uncontrolled high blood pressure is serious, and I can quit whenever I want. But when I quit, you quit. Sincerely, your heart.
To get your high blood pressure to a healthy range, visit heart.org/blood pressure. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Thursday nights are about to get weird. UFOs, ghosts, lost world, cryptozoology. It's time to take back the night with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, exploring the bizarre. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Incoming message.
In a digital world infiltrated by government as well as civilian disinformation, a single, powerful, and researched voice speaks through the night.
We're getting a signal.
Join Erica Lukes, the host of UFO Classified, as she interviews some of the hottest, sometimes controversial, but always informative people in the world of ufology and the paranormal.
They knew for sure that it was an alien craft, and our governments around the world have covered it up.
The reason I was taken aboard was because there was no choice. I would have been dead.
UFO Classified, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, every Friday night. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there just waiting to be discovered. But the question is, are you ready for it? UFO Classified, hosted by Erica Lukes, the new voice of the high desert. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, and a very warm welcome back. If you want to call in and perhaps ask Jason some questions, or indeed myself, then you're quite welcome to. If you want to donate to the show, then you're quite welcome to. Just go to kcorradio.com and you'll find the show, and just click on the donate button. And you might also be interested in the book Summerland, which you can get on Amazon. We're talking to Jason Figgis, as I've just mentioned, wonderful film and TV director, and we're talking about various things, including some of the experiences that Jason might have had on a psychic level. So welcome back, Jason.
Thank you very much, Leo. Always a pleasure.
For me too. It's a great privilege. So have you, some of these experiences that you've been talking about, premonitions and that kind of thing, I do feel myself they're much more normal and much more common than some people, skeptics, certainly like to make out. Have they developed as you got older? Have you had more?
Yeah, they have, but sometimes it depends. Like if I'm working on a project, outside influences become minimal because you're so concentrated on the job at hand. But that doesn't mean that serendipitous things might not emerge to help that project along. And one particular thing, I'll never forget Simon Marsden telling me when we were working on The Twilight Hour, he had been struggling to find a quote that he really wanted to include in the film because he wrote the script for the documentary. And literally, he'd gone through all of his books in his library and he was going crazy over trying to find it. And then suddenly a book fell off his shelf and opened on the page with the quote. Now, Simon was not somebody to, for in any way, shape or form to exaggerate. I mean, he was even though he had an amazing interest and expansive interest in everything otherworldly, he never exaggerated. In fact, I remember to the point of, he said at one time that he isn't out to prove the existence of the paranormal, but more just to experience things as he experienced them on a daily basis or on a weekly or monthly, depending on what he's doing, and to be open to whatever those experiences might be. But he didn't want to try and force it down anyone's throat or try and make them believe in something they didn't want to believe in. So he was very matter of fact, and he laughed about it. He said, how helpful was that? But he kind of thought it would have been nice if it had fallen off the shelf earlier in the day and he didn't have to go through everything. So it made him work for it, It made him work for it. But things like that do happen. I've found things like that, definitely will happen. But like a very odd one, for example, we were talking earlier about being connected to particular subject matters or to people. A very strange one happened in that suddenly I was in a bookshop and I thought, oh my God, there's Rex Harrison's biography. I'm going to get Rex Harrison's biography. And I bought it and I started reading it and it was amazing. And then one night I had a dream that I was walking through the grounds of an old nursing home and I saw a very old man being pushed in a wheelchair, and he had a tartan blanket over his lap and he was bent forward and there was a young, pretty nurse pushing him in the wheelchair. And I even remember feeling the crunch of the gravel under my feet. Everything was so real, and smelling the roses that were lining, the pathway. And as he got to me, I put my hand on it and I said, my God, I said, you're Rex Harrison, aren't you? And he looked up at me very feebly and kind of looked under his eyebrows, and he nodded very, very slowly and weakly. And the nurse smiled at me and she pushed him on and I watched them leave. The next morning, I woke up, turned on the radio, and they said, veteran actor Rex Harrison died last night. And that is no word of a lie.
I remember my ex-mother-in-law having a dream one night, and she took her youngest daughter, and she's Irish as well, and she remembered flying, and she came to this house she knew in Ireland. She lives in England, and as she went through the door, she knocked her arm. And she did whatever she needed to do. And then she woke up in the morning and she had a big bruise on that arm. And I know I've had experiences of astral projection, I used to astral project at will when I was young, up to about the age of 10. And I think because the onset of puberty was coming, and, you've got all the hormones to deal with, but if you're empathic or extra sensitive, it can hit you like a hammer. So there was a little bit of design in kind of shocking me out of that. And the way that happened was, had a teacher that was those teachers that you get, or people that are just fascinating, you could sit and listen for hours. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and he said, we're going to read this book today about the boy that can fly. And I think that was the title. I don't forget it, actually. And I thought, oh, this is right up my street. I know all about this. So, he read the book, and then he made a comment after it, something like, well, that was a bit silly. And immediately in my mind, I thought, that's not normal. And it grounded me to such an extent that it stopped. But I had some fascinating experiences doing that, and it's I think to an extent because of the family issues and things that went on, quite a tough childhood. But on the flip side of that, with all the things that were happening to me, an absolutely magical, wonderful childhood. So many experiences, and it's including coincidences, as you say. I think once you begin to develop and you become sensitive, students of mine, they say, "Oh my God, this happened! Can't believe it." But after a while, what's abnormal becomes normal. And I was looking after my daughter in a park. She was on the swings, and she was only young. She was about 3 or 4. And I turned to see a guy coming in through a gate about probably half a mile away. And he came in, made a beeline for me, and we started talking about spiritual things, and then he left. And I never saw him again. But we exchanged information, and it wasn't a kind of a wander into the subject. It just broke out, had a conversation for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then he went. So for me, these things are very, very normal. Have you seen spirit yourself, or had that kind of experience? Because again, I think when that happens, that's something that really makes you think.
It does, actually. I'll tell you about that in a sec, but I want to go back to something you said about, astral projection, out-of-body experience. One thing that really struck me as well, that I had a friend, and she had tried to commit suicide when she was 18 years old. Really bad childhood, and everything just got to the point where she took an incredible cocktail of drugs, which really should have destroyed her liver, let alone anything else. But she was pronounced dead in hospital, and she had a major out-of-body experience where she drifted up over her body, and she ended up floating 2 or 3 cubicles down, where she witnessed the doctor telling her mother that at the very least she'd be brain dead. Now, he said it to the mother in hushed tones, and he was holding her arm and saying, "I'm very sorry. If we do manage to resuscitate her, that she'll be severely brain damaged." And they did resuscitate her, of course. And when he came down to see her, and they couldn't believe it, and she was fully compos mentis, she said, "Doctor, why did you tell my mother that I'd be really badly brain damaged? Why would you do that without knowing the facts?" And he was really shocked as to how the hell she could know that. And I think I remember she spoke to him later, and it had kind of moved him and made him think differently about things. Because he realized the only possible way that she could have known that was because it really had happened. Because she said, "I hovered over you and I looked down and I heard what you whispered to my mother." And, so that even changed his idea of what life and death was and what the human condition is, which I think is amazing. And I hope it affected him in a good way, from then on. So that's one thing, somebody that I knew who actually had an experience like that. But then you're asking me if I've seen a ghost, and yes, very, very clearly. When, again, we're going back to my most amazing experience of making a film, the King's Head Theatre. When I went, my fiance and I, we were given, they said that we could stay in the theatre in this beautiful apartment in the attic, with a beautiful skylight, very bright, not the kind of place, one would normally expect to see a ghost. But we were put there because they were getting our apartment ready, which was only 2 doors down, so we could have our own private space. So we could come and go from the theatre, instead of it being, all-encompassing day in, night out, etc. And we went up there, and you had to literally pull a trapdoor open and go up a stepladder and go in and then drop the trapdoor again. And on one side of the apartment space was where they kept all beautiful costumes for the productions going back to the late 1960s. Some really amazing things, worn by incredible people like Gary Oldman and, and Susanna York and all these amazing people, Sarah Miles, all of this stuff. So, and then you step in. So there's no doors. There's only the trapdoor to get in and out. There were no windows there except for the skylight. And I was sitting on the bed, and we laid down our stuff, and we thought, "Wow, this is an adventure. This is amazing." And I turned and looked behind Bernadette, and Alice in Wonderland was standing in the doorway. Now, people are going to go, oh, what the hell is he talking about, Alice in Wonderland? What I'm saying is that this girl looked like what you'd imagine Alice in Wonderland to be. She was wearing the black and white pinafore. Her hair was jet black and held back with a white ribbon. She had white, knee socks that went up over her knees, obviously knee socks, and she had black shiny shoes. And her hands were intertwined behind her back, and she was leaning back with her back against the side of the opening of the door. Well, there was no actual door, but the opening itself. And her feet were forward, and one was crossed over the other, and she was staring down at me with this look of, what the hell are you doing in my room, kind of thing. And she had the whitest face, little ruby red lips, and black eyes, just piercing. And I thought, oh my God, like, what is this? And I said to Bernadette, look, and she turned, no one there. Ran to the opening in the door, flicked on the light where all the costumes were, ran up and down the aisles looking. Again, the only way out was by pulling up that trapdoor, which was quite heavy, and descending the stairs. So I said it to the wife of the owner, Stephanie. And I said, look, is the theatre haunted? And she said, well, I've never had an experience, and I've been here since the 1980s. And she said, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to this friend of mine who's a medium here in London, in Camden. And so I'm going to invite her over for lunch, and I'm going to ask her. So we were out filming, and I came back, and Stephanie said, I've got somebody here. I've got somebody here to meet you. So I walked in, and there was this beautiful-looking woman sitting in the corner of the room, looked quite regal, sitting bolt upright, staring at me as I walked in. I reached out my hand to shake her hand, and she didn't stand up. She grabbed my hand and held it with both of her hands, and she stared at me unblinking for about 10 or 15 seconds, then squeezed my hand and smiled at me, and she said, very pleased to meet you. And I left because I had to go and do other things. So Stephanie, later on that night, she says, come in here, sit down, I have to tell you this. She said, that was my friend, the medium. And I said, I kind of figured. I got a real chill when she grabbed my hand, in a good way, not in a bad way. It was just kind of, whoa, this person's got a lot of energy in them. And she said, wait till you hear what she said. She said, I just invited her over for lunch. I didn't tell her about, the question that you had. And I said, so we're having lunch, and I said, look, I need to know, is the theatre haunted? And she looked at Stephanie and she said, do you really want to know that? And she said, I do. And she said, it's just that you live here and this is your living space and I don't want to disturb you. And she said, I need to know. And she said, there are two spirits here. There is a young man who sits on your doorstep looking very forlorn with his face in his hands. And she went, right. And that did give her the chills because she had to pass by, in order to, day and night, knowing that person may be there. And then she said the other one is a girl of about 12 years old and described exactly the girl I had seen. And then she also said, after she had held my hand, she said, Jason sees very clearly. And I was like, wow, it because I hadn't really considered it. But to have a medium actually say that Jason has the gift to actually see what most people don't see in the spirit world was amazing to me, but kind of scary at the same time, because it made me think all those images that I've had of people that turned out not to be them, but then I've seen them that day, or I've heard they've rung me on the phone out of the blue, was a little bit chilling, but also, affirming in a way, because then that there is something else other than, the realm that we just see on a daily basis, interacting with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the wonderful things about spirit, because a medium's job, pure and simple, is to give evidence of the afterlife. And that happens in many different ways, but it's a very simple message. And the reason that spirit want to get that confirmation through in all kinds of ways, like the way that you've experienced, is because once that door in the mind is opened, when we pass over, and of course we all will at some point, that knowledge there usually wouldn't be a problem, but should there be a problem, that knowledge, that fragment of knowledge helps you when you pass over, because it feels more normal. You're not going to some people get earthbound, of course, for all kinds of reasons, or they get stuck because don't want to believe something has changed. But once you've got that small fragment there, it helps you a lot to get over. And that's one of the real reasons for the messages that are given. It's I was just going to say, so do you still get those premonitions?
Well, I do, but I mean, I can't think of anything specific at the moment, other than I still get that sense of I'm going to see somebody or speak to somebody today that I haven't in a long time. Or even maybe it will be somebody I saw yesterday, but I know that they're going to walk around the corner. Actually, very oddly, the one I've had most recently, which you'll find amusing, was I'm a member of the Screen Directors Guild of Ireland. So every year we'll have a big meeting. And this year, which was only last week, we had it in this beautiful place called the Royal Irish Academy. And it's like a library at a Harry Potter or something. It's an absolutely beautiful place. I'll send you a picture of it. It's really stunning.
Bless you.
So we were all sitting in there anyway, and the meeting was going great. And Ben Wheatley came and visited us, great director, made Kill List and Free Fire and lots of different films. And he came along, and I'd met him before, and we'd been chatting. But I was sitting there, and I suddenly went, Patrick Bergin is going to walk into the room. Now, there's no reason why the actor Patrick Bergin, who played Robin Hood, and he was in Patriot Games, and of course, most famous for the really nasty husband in Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts. And he had a great Hollywood career ahead of him there. And he, there's no reason why an actor should be at a Screen Directors Guild event, but he was there. And the funny thing was, a playwright had wanted me to get in contact with Patrick Bergin about attaching him to a play that, which he's been getting great reviews for, and it's doing really well, and he's won awards and everything. And he thought Patrick Bergin would be perfect for the play. And he'd sent it to Patrick to read, but Patrick hadn't got back to him yet. So there, I turn and I look, and Patrick Bergin entered the room about 5 minutes after I predicted he would, and he sat down with his beautiful partner Helen, who's actually is in contact with the angels, and that's a huge part of her life. And I'm looking at them, getting the chills, going, I cannot believe he's walked into the room. So anyway, I know Helen from Facebook, literally just chatting about this, that, and the other. So when everybody's leaving and they're all swarming around Patrick Bergin. I mean, he's a larger-than-life character, big man, very impressive looking. He fills a room. He'd been talking to Ben Wheatley, and there he is standing there, and all these directors are chatting to him. But Helen was there on her own, and I walked over and I said, Helen, it's Jason Figgis. And she turned and she grabbed my hand in both of her hands. She goes, oh, it's wonderful to meet you. You have to meet Patrick. You have to talk to Patrick. So he came over and he goes, oh, who's this chap? And I said, I'm Jason Figgis. And he goes, Jason, what? I know that name. And then I said, Scott Fibelson, whose play you're going to be. And he said, oh, my God. He said, that's amazing. He said, I was trying to ring him and I could never get through to him. And he said to me, this has to be a film. It has to be a film. Let's make it into a movie. And I said, you won't believe this, Patrick. I said, I knew you were going to be here tonight. And he threw his head back. And I won't tell you what he said, but there were a few four-letter words. But he didn't believe me. So I said to you, I absolutely swear to you, Patrick, that I knew you were going to be here tonight. And he looked at me and believed it because he could see how sincere I was. And we ended up having a great chat. And because of that meeting, we're now developing this project as a feature film together. So, utterly bizarre. And that was only a week ago. So, yes, it's still happening, Leo.
Yeah. I think it's something that will carry on, and I found it's quite amazing how many actors, actresses, directors like yourself, and inspired people in general admit now to having this kind of contact or this kind of experience, because many years ago. Well, I'm thinking of I can't think of the lady's name. Great actress, but she did all the work. Jane Fonda, thank you. Someone's just said to me, Jane Fonda. Brilliant. She kind of admitted that she was having experiences, but apart from a few people here and there, it was a career-destroying maneuver, wasn't it? To admit that these things happened.
I think it was. And look, if you think about the old studio system anyway in Hollywood, that they created the entire persona of their performer. They created what they called stars, that nobody ever got to know about their personal life. Nobody ever got to meet them other than seeing them on a red carpet behind a big barrier. Nobody knew the real person until years later, after they had passed away, and maybe something, came out of the closet where it was like, oh my God, did you know this about them or that about them? So they were very careful about even the likes of Cary Grant or whatever, who everybody in Hollywood knew he was at the very least bisexual, but nobody out in the world knew that, because they always had him out with incredibly beautiful women and, on his arm at premieres. So they were very controlling in every aspect of that. So I think there was a great fear amongst, the community in Hollywood and other areas of public life, where they didn't want to be ridiculed for believing anything outside the mainstream, because the mainstream was what paid their wages. So I think, clearly that was the case.
Yeah. It's happened to lots of scientists years ago, Crooks, and it happened to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I mean, there was that sort of misunderstanding with the Cottingley fairies, etc. But it was very damaging to admit. And for me, it's very comforting to read stories and biographies, or see some news where somebody admits, well, actually this happened to me, because I think for that community and films in general, because the genre is so hot, there's a real chance to kind of push it and explore it and get more people talking about it. So I think it's very interesting. We're going into a break and we'll be back straight after this.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, and a very, very warm welcome back. I'm talking to a very interesting, very lovely guy, Jason Figgis. He's an IFTA nominated film and TV director and has worked on lots and lots of projects, lots of films. He's been credited with 22. So welcome back, Jason. Very interesting to talk to you.
Thank you very much. And it's funny you say 22, because I literally have lost track and I just don't count anymore. I just go from project to project going, okay, I got to develop this. This has to be in development while that is happening. And then 3 more have to be in development so that I can catch up with all these things. And I hate not being busy. I'm definitely a workaholic. I just have to keep projects rolling.
Well, I think that's a good thing. And I think if you have the creative ability to do that, because I'm sure there are lots of directors that are busy, and I'm sure that there are lots that kind of wait for a project or, something they're trying to develop themselves or whatever. So I think it's great that you work all the time. Myself, I tend to be busy as well, but I tend to sort of focus on one or two things at a time. So I think I would find it distracting. How do you keep all that impetus going, when you've got a couple of projects? Because I would imagine myself, I would get drawn into something and feel it emotionally and physically and mentally. And I can do that when I read for someone and then cut off and read for somebody else. Is it a similar thing with you if you've got 2 or 3 projects that are on the go?
It is, because to me it all feels like the same thing. So that way I'm able to keep the energy consistent and keep it high no matter what the subject matter is. If I'm making a film, I'm making a film. If I'm working on another film, I'm still making a film. So the energy all feels the same. So it might be, like I'm developing one about Peter Cushing with John West. We're doing one on Jack the Ripper with 2 amazing Ripper experts. But it still feels like the same project, because every time you can do a bit of work on each one, you're furthering both projects. So the work is getting done and the energy is still moving forward on everything you're working on. So it really does feel like the same thing. I mean, only recently, there's this great website in Ireland called Head Stuff. And it's literally, anything kind of intellectual, anything that the mind wants to, converse with. So they cover everything from film to political issues and sociological, whatever. How do you do that? And I'm sorry, what did you say, Lou?
We lost you there for a moment.
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
It felt vacant. Sorry to the listenership.
No, that's fine, I'm sure. I was doing another show and we were talking about the dark energies and how to protect yourself against them. It's a bit Harry Potterish, I suppose, in a sense, but it's very real. And about 15 or 20 minutes into that program, we went off air. And the producer didn't know, I didn't know. And then we came back, then his mic cut out, stuff was happening in the studio, and the whole show was kind of disrupted. And that lasted for about 3 weeks where we had problems with it. And it was, we even, the producer even captured voices that were playing, that were being recorded, voices from another dimension. Speaking, and he was catching them and playing them back live. So it was quite something. They love electricity and magnetism, so they play sometimes.
That is amazing, yeah. It's funny, that some people have said to me, there's certain subjects that you won't. I'll never make a film about demonism or anything like that, or anything satanic. I do not want to be involved with any of that stuff. And it just feels wrong to me. It's not an energy I want to get involved with at all on any level. So I kind of, in fact, I was asked only recently to be part of an anthology, and I just, I've no problem telling people no and why no, and they said totally understand, totally get it, and I said, look, best of luck with everything, but I want nothing to do with that. Thank you, and. And normally I'm open to, to all kinds of collaborations and listening to people about different ideas. If I think it's something of interest, I'll pursue it. But just certain things I will not have anything to do with.
I can't remember.
Refuse.
Sorry, Jason.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a heavy metal band, I can't remember which one, and they were working in the studio, and one of the tracks was numbered 666. That was the title of the song. And I think it was the drummer had a crash in his sports car, and the bill came in at £666.66, which was quite freaky for him. I don't know whether that's true. It's a story that goes around. down, but I could well believe it. We were talking during the break, weren't we, about John West and your connection to him?
That's a great one, actually, and John has reminded me, and if you're out there anywhere in the ether listening to this, John has reminded me on more than one occasion as to how it came about. Now, John and I had spoken online when he had seen The Twilight Hour, and he was expressing how much he enjoyed it, and we had spoken online, and we were typing away. And he decided that he was going to take a note of my name and put it somewhere because he felt it was important. And so he wrote down my name and he put it away. And then a really good friend of his called Lady Julie Abbott, who's been helping out a lot, actually, really good photographer, great locations person, and she's amazing, really helpful for a film that we're going to be doing in October. And she found out that I was in Suffolk as director of photography on a documentary about M.R. James, which is being produced by Ursula Bielski of... Are we gone again?
No, we're still here.
Oh, sorry. I heard a voice there. That's great. And Ursula Bielski, who does Chicago Hauntings, an amazing group over there. So they had asked me to come and shoot this film about M.R. James, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm not going to East Anglia as director of photography on this project. But Julie told John that I was in Suffolk, and he immediately contacted me thinking, I'd love to interview Jason. He's involved now. He's over here. And I had left already. I'd come back to Ireland. So he was like, oh, no, that's a real pity. But what happened out of it was that we ended up chatting a lot about maybe when I'd be coming back or was I going to get involved in different projects. And I just realized through our conversations that we had a ridiculous amount in common. And he said to me, do you know that a few years ago when we've been talking online that I wrote down your name because I felt it was going to be important to other avenues I was going to explore as a creative person. And from all of that we've set up a little thing called Figgis West, whereby I'm directing projects that he's going to produce. We already have a slate of things in development, which has come out of that energy that we have between each other. So it's kind of amazing, that he would write my name down and then realize shortly or years later that we're going to have this connection and work on projects together.
Yeah, I find it works in a very strange way. John's reminded me a few times because I never remember readings. I only remember if there's something for me to learn, and I just remember that little bit, or something to teach my students. And John's reminded me a couple of times that I did a reading for him, and I said to him that he will be making an impact in America. He will go to America and there'll be an impact there. And he's reminded me of that a few times. And
very interesting.
Yeah, and it seems to be something that's firming up now for him. So hopefully, he's a lovely man.
Yeah, he's a hell of a guy. And, I'm always telling people over here that he's kind of like the British bulldog. That he just decides on something and then he marches ahead and he achieves it. Every day he rings me, he goes, this is happening, I've contacted that person, this person wants to do this, I've got you a house for this film, do you want to have a look at that, what do you think about this? And everything that he's kind of put his hand to has put us in the direction of achieving something that we want to achieve. And it's funny because the film that we're working on together in October is called Winifred Meeks, and it's a haunted house picture. I was originally meant to shoot that in April, but decided to put it off when I was asked to shoot the M.R. James documentary. So if I had have shot that, I don't believe it would have been half the film that it is going to be, having now met John West and everything that he's put in motion to make this a reality. So it's very interesting that that's even connected to the fact that I was already in East Anglia to shoot the documentary on M.R. James. So, very interesting.
This is something that comes through on readings quite a lot, where perhaps a prediction has been given, but there's a need to halt it or to take it in a slightly different direction, cause a pause in some way, because it can be bettered. And often a question comes along, and say, well, why is nothing happening for me? Nothing's working, and it is literally a pause, like a pause in a breath for time and other events to catch up, and it catches up and then it all moves forward. It was something that amazed me when I first realized that many years ago, but thinking about it logically, it's the right thing. You know, there's a meaning behind all of these events, and it's a wonderful thing. Have you had any other experiences apart from seeing spirit and the predictions and that? Because I feel there's a lot more to you. Okay, we're just waiting for Jason to get back to us because there's a little interference with the cell phone that he's on. Sometimes it can just be a slight movement that does it, or I had an incident years ago when I was trying to get Sky. I was fitting Sky. I was a fitter for them for a very, very short time, and I kept losing the signal. And it was okay for 5 or 10 minutes. Then we'd lose it. And I realised that about 2 miles away there was a tree, and the tree was on a hill. And as that moved, we lost the signal, so we had to turn the satellite dish for a little bit. So sometimes it can be quite.
Hi.
You're back. Fantastic.
Well, the funny thing is that I haven't moved at all, and I've had a completely full signal here. So that's really odd. I've been able to hear you guys, but you couldn't hear me.
Yeah. Again, sometimes these things happen. Talking of that, have you ever had experiences when you've played the film back, or you've reviewed it as you're filming, and found orbs or other things in the pictures? Because there are lots of films, aren't there? I think Three Men and a Baby is one of those. There are lots of films. There was a lot of things happening in Jaws. Yeah. So have you found that?
Well, I've had some very interesting experiences working with Simon Marsden. One of them in particular was when we were filming at Castle Leslie in County Monaghan, and Simon was photographing in a particular room, which was an old ballroom that they hadn't yet renovated. And Simon said, "Look at this." And I looked through the camera lens, and there was a light dancing in the camera lens. And he said, "You can't see that with the naked eye, can you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Neither can I." But it was there in the lens, dancing away in the lens, but you couldn't see with the naked eye. So we kept taking his photographs, but nothing came out on the picture. But what makes this extra strange is that about 2 years later, my father and I decided to go down to that ballroom and have a look at it because he wanted to see where we had filmed. And they still hadn't renovated it. And when we went down, we were standing in the dark, and suddenly the entire room lit up with a brilliant white light and then disappeared. And we got out of there pretty quick, I might add. But that was unbelievable experience that I shared with my father. And my father's also had experiences, throughout his life. So I think we might share that connection. That was pretty extraordinary, I have to say.
Yeah, John and I have got a common friend, Paul Salmon, and Paul loves photography. Takes some beautiful photos. But another gift that he's a medium, but another gift that he has is he asks for orbs to show themselves, and he takes pictures of them. And they, I wouldn't say they appear completely at will, but more often than not, they will appear. And he tells a story of walking along and sitting on a bench not far from his home and wanting his dad, who's passed over, to sort of be present. And he got up, took pictures of the bench, and you can see an orb there.
Amazing.
Yeah. There's lots of...
Sorry, you were asking about other experience, and there's one, I don't know why I forgot it, but when I was 10, I was incredibly close to my grandmother, Nora, and she died when I was 10 in 1976, and I was suddenly, about 6 months after her death, I was totally bereft, and I became very hysterical, and my mother tried to calm me down. And that night I went to bed eventually, and I eventually got to sleep. And I remember dreaming of an incredibly bright room with just filled with white light. But then at the end of this white room, a door opened, and the whiteness beyond the room was even brighter, so that you could barely look at it. But out of this white light, my grandmother stepped, as tall as ever, because she was a tall, elegant woman. And she walked out wearing a white robe, and she looked amazing, pink glowing skin and her hair beautiful and white. And she held her arms out in this white robe, and she looked and smiled, and she said, "I am at peace." And I woke up the next day and felt completely back to normal and really happy again, and never felt bad about the loss of my grandmother. So that I thought was quite sophisticated for a 10-year-old to have that kind of dream or visitation.
Absolutely. Well, it's common knowledge amongst mediums, but and it is a generalisation in a sense. But 4 to 6 days after somebody passes over, you tend to have a dream of them, and it's because, like your grandmother, they come back just to say, "I'm fine, I'm over, okay." So I think it's a wonderful experience for you to have, because again,
it really was.
It gives you that sensation not only of continuity, but happiness. Because I found religion's quite destructive. It's all hellfire and damnation, and people hold on to that fear, I think, when they're passing, if they don't have this knowledge. So it's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, what are you working on? Any other documentaries that you can share with us that you're looking forward to? Which kind of direction are you going in? Is it still quite as broad as what you've done, or are you focusing more?
It is broad, but there's something that I've always been interested in, and that is the great English actor Peter Cushing, who was known affectionately as the Gentleman of Horror. And I've always been a massive fan of Peter Cushing, and I was always looking for the right time to try and put together a documentary about his life and work. And then, of course, again, meeting John West, and it turns out that he adores Peter Cushing and knows everything about him as well. So we realized that we could combine our energies and start putting that into reality. So we've already begun early work on putting that forward and trying to attach various people who are also famous, which can really help get a project off the ground. So there are a lot of famous people who were, hugely inspired by Peter Cushing as well, if they're of a certain generation, people of my age and John's age. So that's something that's really starting to gain kind of power and impetus. But another one is we're looking at a documentary on Jack the Ripper. Now, I can't say who our suspect is because a lot of people get really upset. But we're working with two of the world's leading experts on Jack the Ripper in putting this documentary together. So that's really exciting. And we're going to be talking to some. Are we gone again?
No. It's just a call was coming in. I wasn't sure whether you can hear it through the radio. I've just had to cut it off. I do apologise.
No, you're fine. My God. I like the raw nature of these interviews. Anyway, anything could happen. I mean, people might even believe I'm sitting in the potting shed. While I talk to you on the phone. See, we laugh at the knowledge, and we know that maybe he's not joking. But yeah. So yeah, I do. Feel free to interrupt me at any time.
No, that's fine. It's just I can hear it, and I've declined it twice. But there may be a little persistent.
That'll be John West. That'll be John West trying to ring and be part of the show.
I'm not sure if it was Peter Cushing lived on the coast, didn't he? I can't think where.
He lived in Whitstable.
Whitstable,
yeah.
I went there. Yeah. And that was nice. And I think there was a song close to about Whitstable and Peter Cushing that a local band did, which was.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And it was.
I found out a few years ago, and it was really annoying to discover that if I had visited Whitstable when Peter Cushing was alive, he was a really fine watercolorist. And he would sit in the local cafe almost every day sketching pictures of the people that would come in. So, and I believe he was incredibly approachable. So I just imagine that I missed this incredible opportunity of sitting down, having a cup of tea with the master of the genteel horror film. Even though, of course, at the time, horror films were considered quite radical because, the first colored British horror movies with this splash of gore across the screen with the Curse of Frankenstein and then, the horror of Dracula. And, they were considered very radical and terrifying. But of course, now, in retrospect, when we look back at these films, they're very homely. They're the kind of things you could watch with a cream bun and a cup of tea.
We're just going to go into a break, and we'll be straight back after
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors.
One of the planet's most powerful antioxidant products is here for you to enjoy. Chaga Mushroom Tea. This tea has been used as a potent natural health solution for thousands of years. In fact, the Chinese call it King of the Herbs. The health value alone is worth a look as Chaga Mushroom Tea packs a punch with pure vitality and smooth energy. It's 100% wild-crafted, safe, and effective. Get it now at arcticchaga.com. That's ARCTICCHAGA.com or call 916-969-2678. That's 916-969-2678. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Chaga Mushroom Tea. Order your supply today.
That's
good.
Turn your radio up.
All the music I want to hear.
This is my station.
Adopting a new pet is a rewarding experience. And shelter pets make super pets. Your new best friend will steal your heart, bring you happiness, and enrich your life for years to come. You can make a difference in the life of an animal. Adopt and bring home a shelter pet today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org. This message has been brought to you by the Humane Society of the United States, Maddie's Fund, and the
Alien Deceptions.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For Hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking to a lovely gentleman, Jason Figgis. He's nominated by IFTA for films, he's TV director, and we've been talking tonight about some of his work and some of the experiences that he's had, because he's very much into the supernatural. Some of his works has included that. So, a very warm welcome back, Jason.
Thank you very much, Leo.
Have you spoken, because I think we briefly touched on this, have you spoken to many actors, actresses that have had paranormal experiences? Because I know there was a series running from the States, and one of my favourite singers, Shaka Khan, was telling her ghost story, and that she was 16, I think, when she was touring, if I remember this correctly, and there would be the band used to take care of her because she was a young girl, but she had lots of I don't really like the word ghost, but it's as good as any. She had lots of ghost experiences, and one was following her around. So have you met any celebrities that are that have opened up to you and talked about this?
Yeah, I actually became quite good friends with Sarah Miles, the celebrated actress, and she was married to the brilliant screenwriter Robert Bolt, who of course wrote Lawrence of Arabia amongst various films, and worked very closely with David Lean. Now, Sarah is not into the dark side of the paranormal whatsoever, and to her it has to be light. It has to be light, which is very commendable. And she had lots of experiences with the spirit of her late husband at their home, where he had made himself very obviously present to her. But it was funny, she actually wanted me to come out and visit her and discuss maybe doing a documentary about this. And she saw the Twilight Hour, and it changed her mind because she thought the film was too dark and eerie. So I was kind of trying to explain to her. I said, Sarah, but that's not who I am. I said, if I do a film, then that film has to cater to the mood or the feel of, what is being put across. Absolutely. I said, but if we're doing something about the lightness, well, then that is the way the film will be produced. But it kind of spooked her, and she ended up cutting ties with me. And I kind of thought, hey, I said, I'm one of the lightest people you'll meet. I said, I'm not into the dark in this subject matter. To me, there has to be positivity there. There has to be, something to reach out to, that you go, there is something brilliant on the other side. But she didn't quite, I don't know whether she was, in a bad space at that time. But yeah, I never heard from her again. So that was interesting, because she had really opened up about, the fact that her husband was very present. But that's the only one. That's the only experience I've had with somebody directly. But actually, one of my favorite stories that I've heard many times, Richard Harris. Now, of course, Richard Harris would be very down to earth and grounded, and all about being very straightforward and upfront and honest. And he said he remembered being in London one day, and he saw this beautiful house, and he'd made a load of money. And he walked up to the owner and he said, I love your house and I want your house. And the guy said, it's not for sale. And Harris said, everything's for sale. And eventually they agreed on a price, and Richard Harris paid way over the odds for this house. But when he bought it, he realized it was horrendously haunted. And every night he would wake up and there'd be a woman standing over his bed staring down at him. And it got to the point where he named her like something like Gladys, and he'd shout at her and say, "Gladys, get out of my room." But after a while, it started to get to him, and he just felt it was oppressive, and he ended up selling the house anyway, probably at a massive loss.
Yeah.
But I remembered him telling that story, and of course, I think it was Parkinson who said, "And do you believe in all that?" That's what do you mean, believe in it? It was my experience practically every night. I've got no choice but to believe in it. And of course, Michael Parkinson is, a Yorkshire man. It's all like, very, very, everything has to be very clear cut, no nonsense Yorkshireman. So I don't think he was having any of it, but you could tell how much Harris believed in his own experience.
Well, as you say, if it's something that's happening every night, because you go through stages of denial, it's a nightmare, it's a dream, I'm seeing things, and and you go through the whole caboot, and you then come to a logical explanation, which is, I don't really like this, but it is happening, So it's quite strange. I remember walking along the roads sometime, and many years ago, I was born in 57, so during the mid-60s, there were still bomb sites in London, or what were bomb sites, and no houses built on them, and there were lots of houses which were derelict or just shut up, and there was one round the corner from me, and hadn't been lived in for years, and as a nosy child, I went up and I looked through the windows, and I wasn't entirely surprised, because I must have known there was something there, but I could see someone playing the piano, and I thought, well, that's really odd, and this memory's only just come back to me tonight, and I thought, well, that's a bit strange. And then I realised, of course, most of the house was boarded up, and I went back to, I hadn't left, but I just looked back through the window, and of course there wasn't anything there. So that was something that happened to me, but I had become very used to that because of so many things that were happening. But it was just an odd thing of looking through this derelict house and someone there sitting there playing the piano.
Well, it must give you a sense of relief, Leo, that, or a sense of calm within yourself, that you have so many experiences and that you realize that there is another side to things. Whereas so many people, I think, are very bleak in their outlook, and they go, that's it, no, lights out, you're gone, there's nothing, there's absolutely nothing. Whereas they even refuse to entertain the fact, then, why are we here? What is the point of it all? Somebody once said that your chance of being born a human being is like winning the lottery 100 times in a row. Yeah. I mean, that's incredible odds, like really incredible odds. And so you kind of wonder, what is the reason for it all?
Well, the reason for it, pure and simply, if we are trying to learn something in spirit, or have a particular experience, because there's no time in spirit, it could take us 200 or 300 years to learn. Plus, also being here, because we're very dense here. It's a low vibration, and so we have experiences here that we couldn't have in spirit. For example, to get around is instantaneous. You only need to think of a place and you're there. Here, it takes us a year to learn to walk practically. We've got the weight of this body. So this is a very, very unique place, but we can learn so much more in 80 years than 10 than we can now. So it is purely a place of testing, really, where we can experience those things a little more quickly, but also experience unique things like the weight of this body. So it's
amazing, and I know that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't considered that. That's something my wife would like to hear, because she's always asking that question, when she hears of terrible things in the world, and she's like, why? Why do children suffer? Why do these terrible things happen? And I remember Stephen Fry was once interviewed by our number one interviewer here, Gay Byrne, and he said, "What are your feelings on God and this?" And he said, "I don't believe in any of this." He said, "Because why would a loving God allow children to suffer in the way they do?" Yeah, and he was really angry. He was just incredibly angry. And of course, Stephen Fry is a very intelligent guy, and full of great wit and humor. But certain things he will just not be pushed on, and he didn't want to discuss that because it just made him really angry.
I know that he's a great skeptic. I do enjoy watching him on QI and things like that. A brilliant, brilliant mind. But people sometimes ask this. And what I found is that people that are severely disabled, for example, are very, very pure spirits, and they incarnate because some of it is a karmic repayment, and they're put in a position where others can either do right or wrong. So if they're a paraplegic, they're completely at that person's mercy. So that person has a chance to do right or wrong, and it's a chance for them to do the right thing. When we're here, we look at things from a very human point of view, from a spiritual point of view. To be born in Africa during the middle of a war and starve all your life and that, as a spirit, we can see that it's purification by fire, in essence. It purifies the soul. But when we look at it as Stephen Fry does, and we can do, from a human point of view, you think, why the hell would I choose that incarnation? That's just not right. From a spiritual point of view, it's very different. But I understand him. I came across a story called The Red Barn, which happened I think 200 or 300 years ago. I'm not sure.
Maria Martins, wasn't it? Maria Martins, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful story. And I thought to myself, because obviously Stephen Fry is an actor, and I thought, well, he must know of that story. I think again with him, and I've found this generally with skeptics, there is that fear there of, I'm not pure, I'm not right, and it's scary. If there is something that scares me, and I think some of it is that, but I never try and convince skeptics, because they have incarnated with that part that they need, if you like, isolated from the rest of spirit to have a particular experience. So I never try and convert people.
Have you ever noticed, Leo, that when you do something really nice for somebody, how good you feel for having done it? And I think that's amazing, the energy you get from that. And here's, I don't know whether we have time, but there's a short story I could tell you about something that I had done, which I didn't even realize what I was doing. And that I went to Yorkshire on my own. Have we time?
We've got about 6 or 7 minutes, I think, maybe slightly more.
Okay, well, this is a very short story. I was in Yorkshire, and I wanted to visit all these locations associated with Wuthering Heights and the Railway Children, and I went to these places, incredible. So I stayed in Haworth, and there was a local shop, and I called into this local shop, and there was a girl there of about 18 or 19, and she was incredibly beautiful, like the Timotei girl in those ads. Blonde hair, golden skin, light blue eyes, absolutely beautiful. And I looked at her and I thought, God, she's a beautiful girl. Now, I'm not the kind of person to tell people something like that, because I'd be quite shy. I wouldn't, I'd be embarrassed that they'd react badly. But everyone else left the shop, and she handed me my groceries. And just as I was about to leave, I felt this compulsion. And I immediately blurted out the words. I said, "You're an incredibly beautiful young woman." And immediately I felt something like drop within me of utter embarrassment. I thought, I can't believe I said that out loud. But instead of her doing the usual thing that a girl would do, and they go, "Oh, stop, shut up," or whatever, she stood back with a huge beaming smile and said, "Thank you so much." Now, I walked out of the shop, but I turned back and looked through the window, and the old lady who owned the shop ran over to her and said, "What did he say?" And she looked back with a red face, beaming smile, and was obviously telling her what I said. So the next day I went into the shop, and I said, "Oh, I see your assistant isn't here." And she said, "Do you know that was her very last day working for me, and that girl has no confidence whatsoever, and she was about to go to Leeds to go to university. And she said, what you did for her, you have no idea, that you gave her the confidence to go to university and feel good about herself. And I walked out of that shop going, I was just meant to say that. And I felt the words were pulled from me, like I had no control over it. And so I had literally done something to change how this young woman felt about herself. And whenever I think of that, 20 years later, I get the same warm feeling that I helped do something, no matter how small it may seem, but that actually helped her confidence in herself.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's happened to me many times, and for me, it's been life changing. I used to play guitar, and I was invited to join several bands, and then I was a bit embarrassed about getting up on stage and that kind of thing, and kind of declined it. But then something happened. I really didn't feel like playing. I started not to play very well at all, and then just abandoned the guitar. And I realised that if I had carried on that way, my life would have been very different, not doing what I'm doing. And I've had 3 or 4 of those experiences, and one of them I was with a girlfriend in a disco that gives my age away, and she just asked me, are you coming round for lunch on Sunday? And I felt myself shifted out of my body, and I could hear myself breaking up with her. And I was really shocked, and she was quite teary, and it wasn't forceful, but I was just explaining like that's not going to happen, and she took the meaning straight away. And then I got dumped back in my body, and I didn't know what to say. I mean, there wasn't anything I could say because I'd heard myself break up. And again, I think if we'd stayed together, because I did love her a lot, my life would have gone in a different direction. So sometimes spirit do take over, and if something's got to be said, then that's the way it happens. And again, I don't think it was coincidental that you were there. I think you were guided, and obviously she needed to hear that. It does make you happy when you do good things for people.
It really does. It really does. And then, of course, the opposite, if you do something terrible, it haunts you, like, why did I say that? Why did I hurt that person? Why did I do that? And so you get that opposite reaction. So I love, having the opportunity to do good things.
Yeah, I think it's a natural human thing. But I know from talking to my guide that sometimes we are put in a position where we feel we react badly or aggressively, and it's a karmic thing, because whoever has been the brunt of it, sometimes they just won't listen, and they need a shock. They need somebody sometimes to stand up to them to make them change their course of life. So it can happen the other way round. It's a very curious thing, but of course from our point of view we think, I wish I hadn't said that now, but sometimes there's meaning behind it. There's a reason. Fantastic. That's a lovely story. Has that kind of thing happened to you before? Because you see wonderful things on YouTube, don't you? I saw something a week or so ago, and this guy was in America somewhere, and there was a little black boy. Well, I say he was probably 10 or 12, something like that, living on the streets. And he'd gone into the shop with this guy, and the guy said, "Have anything you want." And bless him, he went and picked up a sandwich, and he said, "No, you can have anything you want in the shop." And he ended up spending, I think, $5,000 or $6,000. He got a whole basket full of food and a football and different things. And I think that's the real power of money. There are too many people that hold on to it and think this is mine.
That's my wife's philosophy, though. My wife always says, let's make as much money as we can so that we can help other people. So she's a great influence. She's an amazing influence. Whenever anything good happens in film and this opportunity comes, she always says to me, we can help children. We can help children. And that's exactly how she feels about any kind of success, which is brilliant, because that kind of lifts you, and you think, well, there's a bloody good reason to be successful.
I don't know how true it is, but there's some very touching stories on what's it called? It's the Boss series, where Undercover Boss. And I'm sure some of it's kind of made up, but again, my feeling towards money is exactly the same. We certainly can't take it with us, but we can certainly make people happy.
Yeah. And they're the greatest fantasies about wealth. I know that I've always thought that. I thought, hey, imagine if, you suddenly sold a movie for $50 million. And I always think about how I could change other people's lives, paying somebody's mortgage off, or suddenly surprising themselves with something they've always wanted and just seeing their face light up. So it's interesting that tends to be the motivation a lot of the time, is to be able to do things for other people, and how you get back from that. Some people would say, is that selfish then? Because you're getting an incredible feeling from helping other people. But I think that's the reward for doing great things, is that you feel so good about it.
I agree with you 100%. I was told many years ago that I would make a lot of money. And my instant thing at that time was, that's fantastic, because yes, of course it will help me and I won't have to worry, but I can do good, and that was my reaction. Absolutely.
So it's kind of shocking, isn't it, when there are billionaires in the world to do quite the opposite, and you kind of wonder, what team are they playing on?
Exactly.
Say no more.
Yeah, and again, when they pass over, I'm sure they'll find that, my God, I could have done something with it. There's a similar line, isn't there, in Liam Neeson's film? I can't think. He played Schindler's List, and there's that little bit. I think that scene's particularly badly played, unfortunately, but he says, look, I've got this car, I could have saved 12 more lives.
It's actually his pin. It's his pin. It's his Nazi pin, that he says that if that was made of gold and he could have melted it down. I always found that an incredibly emotional scene, when he breaks down and they surround him and they hold him, just because of the nature of what he's saying. That he felt that he could have saved more. And of course, the whole idea in Judaism is that if you save one person, you save man entire, which is interesting, in itself. But he had saved so many of them, but he still didn't feel worthy, or that he had done enough.
There's a wonderful guide called Silver Birch. And you can find him online, and one of his sayings is incredibly wise, and one of his sayings is, if you can help one person in this life, then your life is worth it. So it's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, that is interesting. And the silver birch is my wife's favorite tree. That's interesting. So maybe we should look at all of them.
Have a look. They're printed. It was originally printed by Two Worlds. It's been wonderful talking to you. We've got literally about a minute left. It flies as always.
It really does. I can't believe that was 2 hours.
I know. It'd be lovely to have you back on sometime in the future. And
I'd love to.
Thank you. And I know we're going to meet in October at some point. So fantastic. I'm lost for words now, and I'm not usually. I'm trying to think of something. It's my guide rattling on about something, and I've distracted myself. It's been fantastic, Jason, to talk to you, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you're wanting to listen to this on archive, then you'll be on in I think it's about 12 hours, so you can listen to it. So if you missed it or you want to download it, it'll be there. So thank you to everyone that's listening, and God bless you, and we'll speak to you next week.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.